Welcome to Tokyo Wave, recorded in a live studio in Harajuku, Japan, with your hosts, Aaron and Parker. Alright everyone, welcome to episode 126 of Tokyo Wave. We're your hosts, Aaron Randall
and Parker Allen. On Tokyo Wave, we bring you weekly updates from our studio in Harajuku.
Join us in segments featuring this week's top news,
political happenings,
business,
and other random garbage.
To get us started, here are this week's top news highlights.
January foreign entries to Japan near 1.5 million people amid Lunar New Year boost.
Japan January trade deficit at record 3.5 trillion yen on energy imports.
Japanese city fires doctor for verbally attacking students without masks.
This week in Japan. Alright, so our first story. January foreign entries to Japan near 1.5 million people amid the Lunar New Year boost.
Kyodo News has reported that the estimated number of foreign visitors to Japan in January increased by some 130,000 from the previous month to almost 1.5 million entries, based on government data released on February the 15th, thanks to a boost from the Lunar New Year holiday and eased coronavirus measures for many countries.
But while travelers from East Asia, including South Korea and Taiwan, represented about 1 million visitors, the total was still 44.3% below pre-pandemic January 2019.
Chinese visitors totaled just over 31,000, down almost 96% from the same month 4 years prior, as the Japanese government enhanced border controls from people traveling from China, where infections have spread explosively.
The Japan National Tourism Organization said that January's figure of about 1.5 million people was lifted by travelers visiting from countries observing the week-long Lunar New Year holiday period running from January 21st to the 27th, while demand from Western countries was low following the December holidays.
According to the data, travelers from South Korea constituted the largest share with around 560,000 visitors, followed by Taiwan at about 260,000 visitors, and Hong Kong at around 150,000 visitors.
The United States came fourth with around 88,000 visitors. China was eighth, with a revival in visitor numbers from the country widely seen as the key to Japan's inbound tourism industry, making a full recovery.
Japan is planning to ease its coronavirus measures against visitors inbound from China within the month to test arrivals by random selection at airports.
Currently, all visitors from Japan by direct flight from mainland China are tested on arrival. The government also plans to keep requiring entries from China to present a negative coronavirus test within 72 hours before departure.
Yeah, so obviously inbound tourism to Japan is on the rise, but that's still not the numbers that we need, obviously.
Yeah, but the Chinese numbers too are abysmal compared to what they were in 2019.
At the same time, though, you cannot help but understand the Japanese government's stance given the still very high levels of COVID in China. So it's difficult, of course, to balance economy and public health safety.
Absolutely. I think one of the issues with China, too, is a lot of them can't get out of the country right now. So they've got their own domestic problems, right now. So
I'm also wondering what percentage, 33,000 Americans compares with the 2019 numbers, because that sounds like a very low number.
Yeah, it sounds like a weekend. Pre-pandemic, right?
Yeah, we're all the, people with Crocs and backpacks.
Yeah,
where are they?
yeah.
I haven't seen them. So there's no Americans.
Yeah, not a whole lot.
Come on, Crocs and backpacks, we want your money.
All right, and up next, Japan January trade deficit at record 3.5 trillion yen on energy imports.
Kyodo News has also reported that Japan posted its largest ever trade deficit of 3.5 trillion yen, that's 26 billion US dollars, in January after energy import prices jumped and export growth slowed, with record red ink logged with major trading partner China, the Japanese Finance Ministry said on February the 16th.
The deficit, roughly a 1.6-fold increase from a year earlier, exceeded the previous record of 2.82 trillion yen in August last year, highlighting the vulnerability of Japan, which has almost no domestic energy resources and relies on other nations for over 70% of its energy.
Shameless plug here. I've actually started another podcast called Japan Unleashed, and our first episode, which just came out a couple of days ago, actually covers this topic in painstaking detail.
So guys, make sure to check that out. It's Japan Unleashed.
Japan Unleashed. So, Japan logged red ink on its trade deficit for the 18th consecutive month.
China's Lunar New Year holiday began in January, earlier than in recent years, likely contributing to Japan's biggest trade deficit, with the country of 1.4 trillion yen. China-bound shipments tend to decline during the holiday period.
Yeah, I was actually waiting on some stuff to come in from China, not on the slow boat, but yeah, airmail.
Yeah.
And yeah, when they take a holiday, they take a holiday.
Oh yeah.
Still waiting on it. According to the Finance Ministry's preliminary report in January, total imports surged 17.8% to 10 trillion yen, boosted by coal, liquefied natural gas, and crude oil imports.
Exports rose 3.5% to about 6.5 trillion yen, helped by US-bound cars. The values of both imports and exports were the highest for the month of January since comparable data became available in 1979.
Slowing export growth is a worrying sign that the global economy is losing strength amid aggressive interest rate hikes in major economies, except for Japan.
Yeah, and specifically the US, it's kind of funny, This is one of the, I'd say, bleeding over effects of U.S. monetary policy and how much they've jacked the interest rates over there, how high inflation is over there. I mean, it's going to be hard for any kind of export-based industry in Japan to continue selling to the U.S. and other countries in Europe at the same levels, before the pandemic.
So, Tokyo Waves, a top stonk tip for the month is sell your US stocks now.
Not a bad idea, except for Microsoft. Keep Microsoft.
They've got AI.
Yeah. Probably keep Google too. They're going to keep, the AI wars are going on now. I say
AI wars.
AI wars. Google and Microsoft are healthy bets right now, I'd say.
Also, anybody who makes tinfoil, because as soon as AI wars becomes a thing in the news, tinfoil stocks are going to go tenfold.
Oh yeah. And guns.
Tinfoil and guns. That's the American way.
All right, and up next, a Japanese city fires doctor for verbally attacking students without masks.
The Mainichi has reported that a doctor at a municipal clinic in Saga Prefecture's Kanzaki City has been fired after vehemently scolding junior high school students for not wearing masks and then violently complaining to their school with a baseball bat in his hand.
Wow. Sorry, a quick aside, but the only times I've really seen Japanese people get dangerously violent, they always seem to have a baseball bat. I used to work for an old school Japanese company, and there were some baseball bats in the office. And sometimes these guys would get so pissed and just walk around with the baseball bat, hitting it against their hand, like they're about to whip someone with it.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's like power harassment plus.
Yeah. Sorry, some traumatic memories just popped into my head.
So, how hard did it hurt?
Luckily, I was never hit. According to the city government, the doctor in his 50s became enraged when he saw multiple junior high school students talking without masks in a public facility attached to the clinic in early July 2022.
The doctor reprimanded them, asking them, quote, "Do you know how many people have been infected with the coronavirus?"
The doctor also visited the school several times from the following day, yelling at the principal and others and kicking a desk while asking them, "What kind of infection control measures are you taking?" He even brought a metal baseball bat with him.
Metal. Good choice.
That will kill someone.
So I hear. You seem to be talking from experience, Aaron.
No. I've never thought about this ever.
After receiving a report from the school, Mayor Shuji Uchikawa and others instructed the doctor to check his behavior. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Afterward, however, officials judged that he had, quote, repeatedly spoken and behaved inappropriately and shown no improvement even after instruction, and concluded that he had, quote, failed to meet the qualifications as a public official. The doctor was dismissed on February 10th, 2023. That took him a while.
Yeah. So this man had also served as the school's doctor, but resigned last July. The clinic had one full-time doctor, and another has been working there since February 13th.
So basically they let this guy keep his doctor job for like almost half a year.
After he did it, yeah. Hard to find a replacement sometimes.
I guess so.
You know, it's funny, in the States, even when I went back, some people have lost their shit. You know, I think we talked about that. And like, this guy sounds like he lost his shit, you know, because of, he's a doctor, you know, he's treating patients potentially with COVID for the past couple of years. He's probably had a lot of patients die on him. And I'm not justifying what he did, but he's probably seen a lot of people die. He sees young kids not, you know, wearing masks anymore, respecting the rules, whatever. Freaks out. But I've seen like a lot of Americans too, even my friends or people that used to be my friends, kind of freak out and like take on this new like personality with these new attributes that are kind of volatile, like whether it's direct or indirect, you know, aggressive or passive aggressive.
Yeah, I think COVID has caused a lot of broken friendships, marriages, and broken faces too.
Yeah.
Hopefully not with metal baseball bats.
Hopefully not.
Well, thankfully the doctor did not use his metal baseball bat, but that was not a cool thing to do.
Agreed. All right, and up next on Japanese Politics Wow, we're going to be talking about how Kishida's childcare plans raise questions about who will pay and how.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Tokyo Wave.
Japanese Politics Wow.
The Japan Times recently reported on Prime Minister Fumio Kishida's ambitious plans to significantly increase the government's budget to support childcare. But despite the Prime Minister's remark at a lower house budget committee meeting on February the 15th that he hopes to double spending by increasing the related budget to 4% of gross domestic product, a government spokesperson toned down that statement the following day.
Deputy Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihiko Isozaki said at a news conference, Kishida did not refer to the ratio of family-related social spending to GDP as the basis for considering a future doubling of family-related social spending.
But he did.
This guy said he didn't.
Huh. So details of Kishida's proposal and how to pay for any increases have become a hotly debated topic as Japan is about to have key local elections in April. Just an aside, obviously, local elections mean nothing directly for the national government, but people see local elections and who wins as a barometer of how people are supporting the ruling Liberal Democratic Party and its junior ruling coalition partner, Komeito, versus the opposition.
It's almost like a precursor to what could be a change in leadership.
Exactly. So, good local election result for the LDP, good feelings for Kishida. Bad result, bad feelings.
That's a pretty good way to sum it up. Questioned by the opposition on how to fund the increase in family-related social expenditure, Kishida has only said that his government will carry the debate forward until late April and then outline a general framework around June.
Well, that's interesting because June, of course, is when the regular diet session ends. So it sounds like if a general framework is outlined around then, the only chance for it to be actually passed would be an extraordinary diet session that typically happens in the fall.
Is this all timed perfectly so that way there's just no opposition against it as well?
You know, not necessarily. Obviously, this is a new initiative, as you can only imagine with Kishida's low approval rating, which we're going to talk about later. He's trying to pull out all of the stops in shoring up public approval.
Right.
However, it hasn't worked quite yet. So after arguing that expenditures had actually seen a substantial rise in the past decade from 1.1% of GDP in the fiscal year beginning April 2012 to 2% in fiscal year 2020, Kishida said that his administration wanted to continue work in 4 different directions. That's a lot of directions, which include direct financial support, improvements to social services, working style reform, and enhancements in education. They're going to give everybody Adderall.
A lot of people need it. Answering questions that compared his administration's proposal to his party's recent efforts to double defense-related spending, Kishida said, "Family-related social expenditures should not be a lower priority than defense spending. As a country, Japan attaches great importance to it."
Deputy Chief Cabinet Secretary Isozaki emphasized that since the Liberal Democratic Party regained power in 2012, the government has greatly increased funding for child care policies and expanded child care provision and early education services.
However, Isozaki added that when considering the amount of spending in fiscal 2020, the short-term impact of COVID-19 on national social expenditures should be taken into account.
OECD data indicates that Japan lags behind some European economies, such as Sweden and France, in terms of family-related spending. While I'm sure Japan's expenditures on meatballs and riots are much lower.
Recent media polls show growing public support for additional child care measures, but hiking the consumption tax to pay for the additional outlay is unpopular. If Kishida chooses this route, the already unpopular prime minister and his LDP could face a voter backlash during the local elections in April. Indeed, increased child care policies and financial support are expected to be major campaign issues, but voters are also worried about the rising cost of living.
A recent poll conducted by Asahi Shimbun showed that 54% did not think it was a good idea to raise taxes in order to double the child care budget. Further, a more recent NHK poll showed 69% of respondents favored doubling the child care budget, but only 55% said that increasing the tax burden was unavoidable. The same poll put the Kishida cabinet's approval rating at just 36%, and the disapproval rate at 41%, which all things considered is not as bad as it's been in past months, but still having an approval rating lower than your disapproval rating is not a good sign, typically.
You know, Parker, I got to say, just to jump in here, I'm thinking of the game SimCity. I would not want to be playing SimCity and be in charge of Japan right now because, like, yes, childcare spending is extremely important. Oh my God, there's so many, the amount of children being born is so low. And we've got North Korea right next to us. We've got China, next to us as well, sending over weather balloons, moving their Navy ships through Japan's waters. I totally get that. Kishida said, like, hey, we need to prioritize, child support, over national defense. But I don't know. Like, I mean, if you've got these two extremely volatile nations right next to you, I think it might be a good idea to raise military funding as well.
Yeah, it's really difficult because on both issues, I think that few politicians are going to say that they don't want to raise the military budget if they're in the ruling coalition. Likewise with childcare spending. However, how to fund the budget is the prickly issue. And there's basically only two ways. Either you raise taxes or you print more money.
At the local level, the National Governors Association issued a statement on February 6, calling on the Kishida administration to consider a broad range of sources to fund the child care budget, specifically those that do not place an undue burden on local governments.
Yeah, you'd think they'd say that. Part of the National Governors Association statement said, quote, "In order to ensure there are no regional disparities in child policy and child care support based on the financial strength of each municipality, the financial burden of child policy and child care support should be raised to the minimum necessary." I say.
If only politicians still spoke like that.
Yeah, those were the days. Senator Leghorn, we miss you dearly.
No, I mean, like I was saying, this is such a, difficult issue. Bank of Japan is pretty bearish on, potentially raising interest rates. And what we're seeing right now globally too, with the war in Ukraine, really shows that we're going to have supply shortages. We're going to have really bad inflation. So, yeah, trying to figure out where this money is going to come from is going to be really, really tough.
Yeah, and there's even been a lot of back and forth on who the next governor of the Bank of Japan is going to be as Kuroda's term comes up in April, because it's widely seen that the next person who serves as governor is pretty much going to be the fall guy.
Maybe Parker, you know about this, but Kishida is he playing with the idea, or has he decided that he wants to employ elderly workers that were in retirement?
Well, that's been a thing for a while. Companies have been raising their retirement age, and there have been a lot of companies also hiring older workers even after retirement, sometimes even to their same job, because there's just not enough people.
Yeah, we could definitely talk about that issue more on the show. I think it'd be interesting to dive into, because there have been quite a lot of news blurbs and stuff on social media about Kishida trying to, it's the 100-year life, as they're calling it. So basically getting, 70 and 80-year-olds to come back into the workforce.
Yeah, and that's sometimes works really well and sometimes doesn't. Depends on whether they've got a metal baseball bat in their hand or not, right? But that guy was just in his 50s, so guess he's going crazy early.
Yeah. Hey, listeners, that's right. You listener right there.
Who do you think should be our next guest on Tokyo Wave? Let us know. Drop us a line on Twitter or via email at wave@tokyowave.jp.
We hope you enjoyed Tokyo Wave.
If you haven't already, you can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube.
Join us again next week on Tokyo Wave.